Let's see. So I've read Aliens, Predator, RoboCop, Red Sonja. That's a lot of 80s franchises that I really love. So, how about another? Terminator. Yeah, there's a Terminator comic too. Um, I read the description and it sounds like it's not just a retelling of the movie, but it just takes place in the universe of Terminator. And so, new stories in the universe of Terminator. Sounds good to me. Let's check it out. Well, that was all right. Um, hmm. I would rank this kind of on the same level as Predator. It's serviceable. It's got some nice ideas. It's weak in character, I think. Some of the story ideas and concepts are actually pretty good, but the characters are all kind of flat. You never really get to know them that well, and that's a disappointment. It's not. It's a fine read. I read through the entire thing without, and this was an omnibus, so it was fairly long, like 350 some pages. Um, but well, let's see. The first story is a bunch of rebels are in the future. A bunch of rebels are sneaking into the time travel place, and a whole group of them, like five or six of them, go back through time. Um, and what are they going for? I'm trying to remember. I don't think they're going to protect Sarah Connor or anything like that. I think they're just going back to try and stop Skynet from being built. So there's a Dr. Hollister who's the main person who ends up building Skynet, so they're going back for him. That's what it is. But they're followed back by four other Terminators. And usually in the Terminator movies, you have a target, a Terminator, and a Protector. So it's a small cast. But this one starts out with a group of people and a group of Terminators, which provides something that you don't see, at least in the early Terminator films. I haven't seen Salvation or Genesis. And I say it like that because they spell it like that. Cannon fodder. Uh, it really ups the stakes because the Terminators keep killing people. Unfortunately, you'd never really get. Oh no! Lady in the yellow shirt? Not lady in the yellow shirt. Oh no, not guy with the hair. We love guy with the hair. Hardly knew him. Literally hardly knew him. So the twist, and I'm going to spoil everything, I suppose. The twist is one of the Terminators is actually a human, one of the originally a human rebel medic who was hurt on the battlefield, and Skynet basically dragged his bloody corpse back to Skynet HQ and rebuilt him into a Terminator so that he could be a Terminator field medic. So if a 800 series, basically the Arnold Schwarzenegger series, uh, ends up with a screwed up leg, he can go in there and fix it because he has innate knowledge not only now of Terminator schematics, but human physiology. So he can fix the skin over the metal chassis. Well, he's kind of controlled by Skynet, but he also had a human side. So when he gets back in the past, he realizes that there's a chance that we could win this thing. So he turns against the other Terminators. And so from then on, you have him and the one person who survives from the main group of people. And that story ends with one of the Terminators exploding and driving a car off a bridge, and the Terminator exploding, and the story ends, and it goes to another story. And it's like, was there an ending here? It's picked up later in the volume, but it starts another story where A second Terminator was the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator was sent back to kill Sarah Connor, but a second Terminator was sent back for the same thing. You know, just send as many back as you can. The Schwarzenegger Terminator did the whole thing where it looked up in the phone book every Sarah Connor. The other one went about it a different way and looked up a marriage registry and found out that Sarah Lang or something like that had married a Stephen Connor. So she is now Sarah Connor. So maybe that's the right Sarah Connor. This Terminator, she goes after the newly married Sarah Connor. And it turns out that this Sarah Connor is planning to kill her husband, who's a secretly rich artist, but then he dies, and so she feels bad about it, and then she runs from the Terminator, and there's another guy who got sent back in time and like to 1955. He's just been hanging around for several decades. But he went back in time. He smuggled a bunch of electronic components in his butt or something. Because remember, only everything has to be covered in organic material to travel through time. So I guess he was holding electronic components in his mouth and up his rear. And so now he has a super Terminator frying gun. The reason I'm saying a lot is because I record these in advance, and it's actually been a few days since I read it because I had some technical issues that prevented me from recording for a couple days. So a lot of the details are just kind of escaping me. But this middle story had some interesting ideas, like a second Terminator going for Sarah Connor, but going about it a different way. After all, maybe Sarah Connor wasn't born Sarah Connor. Maybe Sarah Connor is her married name. It's an interesting idea. Although if that is her married name, she probably would be in the phone book as Connor. But she was recently married, so that's why. So that story is just a one-shot, and it's okay. And then it goes back to the main story with the one lady who is the commander of the squad that went back to the past, and the rogue medic Terminator, and the other bad Terminator that survived and is trying to hunt them down. But then another Terminator shows up, but she ends up like in the middle of the ocean and has to kind of walk along the bottom of the ocean for 6 weeks before she hits shore. And they end up capturing one of the Terminators and reprogramming it to fight the other Terminator, so the two Terminators fight to the death, and they both kind of destroy themselves, but one is still alive, so it scavenged the parts of the other Terminator to rebuild itself, and it rebuilds itself with like spikes and horns and stuff, which makes no damn sense. I don't know why it would do that, especially since shortly thereafter it takes the clothing of a police officer, and suddenly it has no horns anymore. I don't know if it broke off its own horns or what. So, whatever her name is, commander person, and field medic Terminator, and some guy who used to work with Hollister, the guy who invents Skynet, decide, hey, let's do surgery on field medic guy and get the robot stuff out of him. Well, the guy who works with Hollister says, you know what, if I just copy all of the Terminator schematics out of his head, I can go sell it to Hollister and be really rich, at least for 30, 40 years until Skynet blows up the Earth, but I'm not thinking that far ahead. So he does, but the commander person, she saves the field medic guy, and then they go hunt down the other Hollister and the guy who betrayed them, and then the other Terminator shows up, and there's a shootout, and then they dump him in the Terminator in a thing of acid, and yay, the good guys win. Or do they? Because there's some Secret Service guy who ends up with a CD that has all the Terminator schematics. Dun, dun, dun! The future is set. It doesn't matter what you do. It's still going to happen. Judgment Day is inevitable. So, I appreciate that this collection of stories did something different, didn't just rehash the movies. It took place in the universe of the movies, but did something new with different characters. And they did a lot of interesting things, because you had all different kinds of Terminators. You had the whole field medic guy, which was an interesting twist. You had a whole squad of rebels going back in time instead of just sending one guy. Really, the biggest problem is some plotting issues, and you never really get to know any of the characters, so you never really care about the characters that much. I mean, what's happening is interesting and fun and cool, but it's hard to get too invested because you never really learn who these characters are. Which is not to say they're completely one-dimensional or completely flat. There's just not that much to them. They're just not that interesting. Still, not a bad read. If you're a super fan of Terminator and you want to read some new Terminator stories in the Terminator universe to sate your Terminator needs, well, there's a comic for that.